Hey girls, this is going to be Dallas's birth story, and I explained in part 1 how I found out I was pregnant and a little bit about my pregnancy with Dallas. If you haven't watched that video, go ahead and click the link down in the description bar, and that will bring you to the video. Because of the complications I had during Dallas's pregnancy, it resulted in me being on hospital bed rest, and I was in the hospital for a little over 3 weeks before I finally went into labor with him. And March 22nd, which was the day before I went into labor, I started to feel a little bit of tightening in my stomach, and I didn't think anything of it, at least not until the morning when I woke up, which was the 22nd, the day I gave birth to Dallas, and I started to feel pain that would radiate from my back and kind of go into my middle stomach or the front of my stomach, and I didn't think anything of it. I just thought maybe it was something that I had ate that morning, or it was the way Dallas was laying, because without the amniotic fluid to cushion his movements or the way he was laying, it was very painful. So I called my mom and I was talking to her, and I explained to her what I was feeling, and she said that it definitely sounded like I was in labor, that I was having contractions. So she told me to let my nurse know, and I did. So my nurse put me on the monitors and said that she would come back and check on me, and if I was still having the pain, that she would go ahead and call the residents to come and check on me to see what was going on. So she put me on the monitors, and when she came back, she realized it wasn't picking anything up, and she had asked if I was still having the pain. And I said yes, I was. So she went and called the resident doctors, and they came and did a cervical check, and they had found that I was 4 centimeters dilated and in active labor. So Dave had just left for work, so thankfully he wasn't too far away from the hospital when I called him. At the time that him and my mom got to the hospital, I was about 6.5 centimeters dilated, and they were giving me Pitocin to speed up my labor because it did start to slow down, and they didn't want to slow my labor or stop my labor because they knew that my body was ready to give birth, that there was something else going on, and they didn't want to risk anything else. And because he was at a more viable gestational age, which was 30 weeks, they knew that it was time for him to be born. So I went ahead against my better judgment and had the epidural, and it didn't take as well as it should have. I still felt pretty much everything. Probably not as much as I would if I didn't have it, but I still felt pretty much everything. I was able to walk after I had Dallas, so if that puts it in perspective. Pushing about 8 centimeters, and those are just practice pushes, and then when I reached the full 9 centimeters, they went ahead and had me start actively pushing. And because Dallas was so small, and because he was premature, he wasn't strong enough to kind of push and wiggle his way through the birth canal. So I pretty much had to do all the work, and it seemed like it took me forever to have him born, because he was just kind of, you know, in there. I actually thought at one point he was stuck, but thankfully, at the last couple of pushes, he was finally born. 4:45 on March 22nd, 2012, and he was 3 pounds, 12 ounces, and 16 inches. And he cried, and that is such a important aspect of the story, because they told us that he wouldn't be able to, that his lungs wouldn't be strong enough to kind of bring up a cry because he was out amniotic fluid for so long. And I knew as soon as he cried that he was going to be okay, and they were going to intubate him, but they realized after a while he only needed to have the CPAP, so they put the CPAP on him, and he did awesome. We were able to see him after a half hour and spend a little bit of time with him before our family came in and before our family was able to see him, which was really nice to kind of have the 3 of us together. And we weren't allowed to touch him or hold him at the time because he wasn't stable yet, but we were able to kind of look through the little isolette that he was in, and just to see how he was doing. And then our family went and seen him as well, and they took pictures and all that. But Dallas spent a little over 2 months in the NICU, and he came home without any equipment or anything like that, and we are so blessed and so thankful that he didn't need to have anything like that, of that sort, because we actually thought he might have had to come home on oxygen because he was on the nasal cannula and the CPAP, because up to the week that he was discharged, he was still using the nasal cannula, but a few days prior to coming home, he decided to use his big boy lungs, and he did very well after that. So he did struggle a little bit with gaining weight and feeding, which was probably one of his biggest, besides being on oxygen. Breathing on his own was probably one of his biggest struggles, would be gaining weight and feeding, and that is something that he's kind of struggled with since then. It's not too much of an issue now because he is gaining weight steadily but slowly, but like I said in my his update video, his 2-year update video, that we are feeding him a high calorie diet so that he can gain weight. But yeah, that's pretty much Dallas's birth story. I'm sorry I didn't go into too much detail. If you're wanting to know more, I will have a link to the blog post that I had about his birth story, that you can check that out as well, and you can get all the details that you might be missing. So I will go ahead and leave a link for that down below so you can check that out. But thank you for watching. Like this video if you did, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!